in order to get revenge. I once deceived a naive young man. I coaxed him into breaking off the engagement with my sister. I used him to bring down my father's company. After I achieved my goal, I cast him aside. But I didn't expect that a few years later, the naive young man would become an outstanding entrepreneur. He also had a fiancée from a comparable family background by his side. He asked me, "Did you ever like me even for a moment back then?" Looking at his fiancée, I lowered my eyes and retorted, "Who would really fall for a naive person?" I saw Asher's name on the interview list. Before the interview, Editor Yang gave me countless reminders. It's not easy to invite Asher to this interview. Put on a good show for me. No matter what. Don't offend him. I gave a bitter smile. I held back from telling Editor Yang that I had already offended Asher completely several years ago. In my memory, Asher used to smile at everyone. But now there's not a trace of expression on his face. He didn't greet me. I was also glad to pretend not to know him. The interview went surprisingly smoothly until the audience interaction session. Someone from the audience asked Asher, "President Asher, it's rumored in the industry that you're like the king of hell in the business world. You show no mercy and don't consider feelings at work. So everyone is curious about what kind of person you are in your private life." The king of hell. Asher chuckled softly, looking at me thoughtfully. If I were really the king of hell, I wouldn't let the person who once deceived me still live so happily. I didn't dare to say a word. And the interview ended in a strange atmosphere. Asher was an honored guest for the TV station. After the broadcast, Editor Yang insisted on treating Asher to a meal. Ever since I knew Asher, he didn't like places with a lot of people. Moreover, given our current situation, he should be eager to leave as soon as possible. So I smiled and tried to smooth things over. Editor Yang, President Asher is so busy. Let's not delay his schedule. As soon as I finished speaking, Asher said deliberately, "I still have time for a meal." Then he looked at Editor Yang. "Do you mind if I invite my fiancée to join us?" Fiancée? I was slightly taken aback. I did hear before that Asher had a fiancée, but the identity and appearance of this girl had never been made public. I originally thought it was just a rumor. But I didn't expect he really had a fiancée. This was big news. Editor Yang smiled like a sunflower when he heard it. Not at all. Of course not. To match the high-end gathering, with Asher present, Editor Yang also specially invited several leaders from the TV station. At the dinner table, Asher's fiancée sat beside him, looking very clingy. I sat in the most corner position, forcing myself not to look at him. People kept toasting Asher one after another, as if they wanted to praise him to the skies. Leaning back on the chair, Asher casually asked, "Why isn't the hostess saying a word today? Are you not satisfied with my performance today?" As soon as he finished speaking, everyone seemed to remember me just then. Editor Yang quickly said, "How could that be? Violet admires you the most." After that, he poked my shoulder. "What are you standing there for? Hurry up and toast." I'm allergic to alcohol. Basically, I can't hold my liquor and will get drunk after just one glass. But I couldn't refuse in today's situation. I picked up the wine glass and walked beside Asher. "President Asher, I toast to you." After that, I tilted my head back and drank the wine in the glass in one gulp. Asher seemed not to have heard me, and didn't move at all. The atmosphere became awkward again. I poured another glass of wine. "I toast to you again." After that, I tilted my head back and drank the wine in the glass again. Asher still didn't move. The girl beside him couldn't stand it anymore in the end. She tugged at Asher's sleeve. "Asher." Before Asher could respond, I poured another glass and gulped it down. I drank 3 glasses in a row. I could hardly stand steadily. My stomach was churning, and my face felt as if it had been scalded by hot water. Asher finally made a move. He picked up the red wine glass in front of him and took a small sip, which was a response to me. "Thank you, President Asher." After that, I smiled politely at Asher, straightened my back with all my remaining strength, and turned to leave. As soon as I left the private room, I ran to the restroom and vomited until I felt dizzy. I don't know how long I waited. When I came out, I saw Asher standing at the door. He had a cigarette in his mouth, as if he was deliberately waiting for me. Violet, do you regret it? Did you wait here just to ask me this? No. Asher sneered. I'm here to see how embarrassed you were after you dumped me. The first time I met Asher was at my sister's engagement banquet. He was wearing a black suit. His hair was combed back, and he was unexpectedly good-looking. At that time, he was nervously hiding behind a curtain, his hands intertwined, looking so nervous that he seemed about to faint, and my sister was standing at the door like a butterfly, showing no intention of paying attention to him. In the end, I couldn't stand it and walked over, asking, "Are you okay?" Upon hearing this, Asher first looked at me warily for a few seconds. Then he whispered to me, "I need to pee." He looked worried, as if he had been holding it in for a long time. I couldn't help laughing. "The restroom is over there." He shook his head. "There are too many people. I'm too scared to go by myself." Asher was the youngest son of the Asher family. It was said that he was quite smart when he was a child and was deeply loved by the old master. Later, he had a car accident, and somehow he became naive. The engagement banquet with Chloe was, to put it bluntly, to consolidate the business cooperation between the two families. With this goal in mind, the whole venue was like a large-scale business networking event. Everyone seemed to have completely forgotten the main characters of this dinner party. "I'll take you there." Hearing my words, Asher slowly came out from behind the curtain. And then, he grabbed my hand. His palm was cold. I was stunned and subconsciously looked at him. I just met his wet eyes like those of a fawn. Blinking his eyes, he seemed to be asking me, "Aren't we going?" My heart softened, and I led him out from the back holding his hand. When we reached the door of the restroom, this guy didn't forget to remind me, "Wait for me. Okay?" I smiled. "Okay. Now that we meet again, things have changed and people are different. He is no longer the Asher who used to rely on me for everything. And I am no longer the Violet who was worthy of his trust." I thought my fate with Asher had completely ended, but I didn't expect that the next day, both he and I were on the trending searches at the same time. It all started with a piece of gossip news. The headline was, "Asher's suspected love affair exposed. Passionate kiss outside the restroom." There were also pictures and evidence below. It was the photo of Asher and me talking at the door the day before. But the angle was quite strange. And it really looked like we were kissing. The comments exploded. "This is a news story with a flavor. Who would have thought that the new wealthy people in the elite circle have such a unique taste? Am I losing my memory? I seem to remember that Asher has a Fiang key. Could it be this girl? I don't think so. For someone of Asher's status, his Fiang key should come from a family of equal status. This girl seems to be just a small reporter from the TV station." The comments kept piling up. Soon, what at a low sigh, the topic Asher's infidelity was pushed to the top of the headlines. And my identity was also revealed. The latest interview with Asher a few days ago was conducted by her. It's basically confirmed, right? Trash mistress. I suggest the TV station completely bans her. The condemnation of me on the internet came one after another. However, Asher never came forward to clarify things for me, putting me in a passive position in this situation. The public opinion was overwhelming and even affected my normal interviews. Out of helplessness, the TV station had to suspend my work. And I was forced to go on a vacation. Editor Yang felt a bit sorry for me. "If I hadn't invited you to dinner that day, maybe this wouldn't have happened." After that, there was a hint of hesitation on Editor Yang's face. "Violet, actually, there's something I've never asked you. Did you know Asher in the past? I felt something was wrong when you toasted him that day. If you really have some feud with him, I advise you to apologize and make up with him. Asher is not someone we can afford to offend. If this matter can't be resolved, it will be a bit difficult to transfer you to other positions in the future." I understood what Editor Yang meant, but I didn't know how to explain my past with Asher. I could only respond with a bitter smile and say okay. After being suspended from my job, I returned to the life of an unemployed person. Actually, I had such times before. At that time, I had just graduated and hadn't found a job yet. I went to Asher's house every now and then. I forced him to change the password to my birthday. And I deliberately flirted with him when he was watching TV. I used my toes to hook his shirt and slowly moved it up, watching his ears turn red. He would always cover his clothes with a blushing face, shake his head, and say to me word by word, "No, no. Only my wife can see my body." I made fun of him. Does the little naive one even know what a wife is? Asher widened his eyes. Of course I know. A wife is someone I will kiss every day in the future. Then do you want to kiss me? Asher blushed and avoided my gaze. I deliberately teased him. Tell me, do you want to kiss me or Chloe? Asher was silent for a while before slowly saying one word, you. Then he frowned in disgust. Why would I want to kiss Chloe? I don't even know her well. Before he could finish, I kissed him. That was our first kiss. Asher was very inexperienced. He nervously grabbed the hem of his clothes with his hands, just like a naive young man. Thinking of this, a smile also appeared on my lips, and I unconsciously touched my lips. The original warmth was long gone. The next day, Chloe saw the news and called me. You met Asher. Are you okay? I hummed. Everything is fine. Chloe sighed. Why don't you tell him the truth? I smiled bitterly. The truth? Which of the things he knows now isn't true? It's true that I deceived him. And it's true that I used him. What else is there to explain? Chloe was silent for a moment. I'm sorry. I made this choice myself. It has nothing to do with others. I took a breath and didn't want to talk about this topic anymore. How's your health recently? Since you're pregnant, you should take care of yourself. Everything is fine. The baby is very good and hasn't been giving us trouble. Don't worry. I curved my lips and was genuinely happy for Chloe from the bottom of my heart. At least one of us, Chloe and I, can marry for happiness. That's good enough. I thought that as long as I didn't take the initiative to provoke Asher, there wouldn't be any more excessive interactions between us. But I didn't expect that Asher's lawyer would come to find me. Asher suspects that you deliberately fabricated false information on the internet for the purpose of publicity in order to conduct an interview. He is now going to sue you for infringement of the right to reputation and slander, and has entrusted me to conduct an investigation. I was completely stunned. Does he mean that I spent money to spread false information on the internet, that I interfered in someone else's relationship, and let myself be cyberbullied, just to create momentum for the news? The lawyer coughed lightly. I only accept the entrustment of the client to conduct an investigation. If you have any questions, you can contact Asher yourself. At this moment, I finally understood. Asher is clearly not a big celebrity. Yet he was actually secretly photographed. Not only was he secretly photographed, but he also occupied the top spot on the trending searches for so many consecutive days. This is probably a self-directed and self-acted play, luring me into a trap. Fine. Give me his contact information, and I'll contact him myself. The lawyer hesitated for a moment. Asher said that you can find him. And you know where he lives? Where he lives? My first reaction was the apartment where Asher lived back then. But now, after so many years, Asher's status is completely different from what it was back then. And there's no reason for him to still live there. In the afternoon, I found my way there based on my memories from back then. I knocked on the door, but there was no response. Out of curiosity, I somehow pressed my birthday numbers twice. With 2 beeps, the door opened. I was startled. I peeked in sneakily, and there was no one at home. The furnishings inside were the same as when I left back then. It seemed that no one had lived there. But it was inexplicably clean. My memories gradually became hazy. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me and turned around sharply. I don't know when Asher appeared behind me. This was a bit embarrassing. I didn't know whether to close the door or leave it open. And I just stood there awkwardly. Asher sneered. I didn't know Violet had the habit of breaking into other people's houses. Then, whatever Lil sigh. Without waiting for my reply, he stepped in directly. Seeing that I didn't move, he frowned slightly. Are you waiting for me to invite you in person? I quickly followed him in. After entering the door, Asher sat on the sofa with his long legs crossed and looked at me. Does it look familiar? I didn't say a word. Ever since I recovered, I haven't dared to move anything here, for fear of forgetting the humiliation you gave me in the past. I couldn't hold it in anymore. What on earth do you want? I told you. I just want to see how down and out you are. My eyes gradually became sore. Well, you've seen it now. It's not enough. Then what do you want? Asher smiled. I want you to stay by my side again. I thought I had misheard. You have a Fiang key. So what? Asher scoffed. I was also engaged to your sister back then. But you still seduced me. Didn't you? But this is different. Chloe had someone she liked back then. So I just. Asher didn't care what I was saying at all. He tapped his index finger on his knee. I heard that Chloe and Dorian got married. And the baby is due next month. Right? Raising a child should cost a lot. I wonder what would happen if I made them both lose their jobs at this time. Asher. Asher looked at me. You said you would do anything for Chloe. What? You don't even want to do this? I clenched and unclenched my fists. Then clenched them again. After a long time, I finally spoke. I agree. I looked at Asher. 1 month. I'll leave as soon as 1 month is up. Asher scoffed. Violet. You're not in a position to set conditions with me now. Asher demanded that I move back to his apartment from back then. I didn't agree. Unexpectedly, the next day I received a call from the landlord, saying that they couldn't rent the house to me anymore, and they were willing to pay the liquidated damages, and asked me to move out immediately. My first reaction was to contact Asher. Does this have anything to do with you? I already told you to move back to the apartment. With just this one sentence. It was as if he had admitted it. Asher said to me. I'm not the fool who was easily deceived by you back then. Violet. There's no benefit for you in going against me now. Under Asher's pressure, I could only temporarily move into the apartment as a temporary solution. However, since I moved in, Asher hasn't taken the initiative to show up. It seems that he just wants to humiliate me. The situation on the internet gradually subsided. A few days later, my job was restored in the company, and my life returned to normal. During this period, I actively looked for a new rental house outside, planning to move out in a few days. After all, now I'm not in a relationship with Asher. If I keep living here, I'll really become the person I hate the most. I came back very late after looking at the house this day. As soon as I entered the house, the doorbell rang. I opened the door, and it was actually Asher. Did you change the password? This was embarrassing. After all, this is Asher's house. And I really don't have the right to change the password. I tried to explain. I thought that since I'm living here now, changing the password would make it safer. You just don't want me to come in. No. I suddenly stopped and looked at Asher. Have you been drinking? Sure enough, upon closer inspection, I found that Asher's face was flushed. And there was a smell of alcohol all over him. His eyes were wide open, looking very dissatisfied. You're so mean. You want to lock me out. My temples twitched wildly. I gave up reasoning with a drunk person. Yes. Yes. I'm a bad guy. I helped him to the sofa. Wait here. I'll get you some honey water. While I was in the kitchen, when I came out again, Asher actually started taking off his clothes. I was stunned and quickly ran over to stop Asher. What are you doing? Aren't you cold? Asher blinked in confusion. Don't you always ask me to take off my clothes? What do you mean I always? Suddenly I realized that something was wrong. It seems that the drunk Asher has suddenly regressed to the state of the little fool he was in the past. I tried to stop him from taking off his clothes. And he got angry. He accused me as if he had found evidence. You changed the password and you don't even look at my ABS. You just don't like me anymore. There were tears in Asher's eyes. My dad said that no one likes a fool. But now I'm not a fool anymore. Why don't you like me? My heart suddenly ached. I couldn't say a word in the face of Asher's questioning. I don't not like you. Then why don't you kiss me? I knew Asher was drunk, but my heart still couldn't help trembling. Asher looked at me pitifully. Like a deserted puppy. I finally gave in and gently pecked his lips. The moment our lips touched, Asher turned around and pushed me onto the sofa. kissing my lips. He was very strong. And his kiss was a bit unskilled. Soon I tasted the smell of blood. My heart was beating very fast. It took a long time for us to separate. Just as I was about to say something, Asher suddenly covered his mouth and said, for the first time, "It hurts." I laughed. There was a trace of blood at the corner of Asher's mouth. I leaned over and gently blew on the corner of his mouth. "Who told you to be so forceful just now?" Asher's eyelashes flickered. "Violet. I miss you so much." I lowered my eyes and softly replied, "Me too." When I woke up the next day, Asher had already left. Everything that happened last night seemed like a dream. During the day at work, my colleagues were discussing where to have the department dinner party in the evening. My phone suddenly rang twice. It was a strange number. "I'll come to your place for dinner tonight." There was no signature. But from the style of the text, I already knew who it was. I was a bit embarrassed. "But we have a department dinner party today." After sending it, Asher ignored me. I was a bit uneasy. He won't think this is an excuse, will he? So I sent another message. "It's a real dinner party. We decided it a few days ago." To make it more believable, I even took a screenshot of the chat records with my colleagues and sent it to him. He still ignored me. It wasn't until dinner time that he replied to me. "Send me the location." I wondered how little credibility I had in his heart. He actually asked for the location to determine if I was lying. I silently sent the location and also took a photo of the table. "I'm really not lying to you." This time, Asher replied quite quickly. He replied with a concise, mem, and then added, "Don't drink." Except for him, no one else tells me not to drink. I rolled my eyes and threw my phone aside without replying. My colleague Nathan leaned over and took a look at me. "Sister Violet, are you okay?" Nathan is a new colleague in our company. He's not very old, but every time he sees me, he shows a bit too much concern. I'm not young either, so I naturally know what this kid means. I replied coldly, "It's nothing." My colleagues teased. "Why does Nathan always stare at Violet? Why doesn't he care about us?" Nathan blushed and defended himself. "I do care about you guys." Everyone started joking along with the topic. The atmosphere made me feel a bit uncomfortable. I pinched my burning ears and found an excuse to go out for some air. As soon as I left the restaurant, my phone rang twice. It was actually Asher again. "Is it over?" "No." "Then why did you come out?" I blinked my eyes and suddenly realized. How did Asher know? Realizing something, I started looking around. Sure enough, I saw a familiar figure across the street, wearing a black windbreaker, standing in the moonlight. My heart started pounding wildly. "What are you doing here?" "To pick you up." I don't know when Asher came, but if I hadn't come out for some air in advance, perhaps he would have waited until our dinner party ended. It turns out that no matter how much time has passed, Asher is still that fool. I no longer had the mood to eat. I grabbed my backpack and ran across the street. "I've said goodbye. Let's go back now." It was silent all the way. The neon lights flashed by quickly, forming a line along the street. Asher was driving, and there were still the marks of the bite on his lips from last night. I wanted to say something, but I felt like there was nothing to say. I don't know when the two of us, who used to talk about everything, had become so strange to each other. The car stopped steadily downstairs, and I got out of the car first. Asher, however, still sat in the car and showed no sign of moving. I was a bit surprised. "Aren't you coming up?" Asher looked at me. "Do you want me to come up?" I thought that since you were waiting for me at the restaurant today, you had something to say to me." Asher was about to speak when suddenly the phone rang. I instinctively glanced at the screen. The caller ID was Irene. Irene. Asher's fiancée. I even forgot that Asher had a fiancée. It was like a blow to the head, and I took half a step backward. "Thank you for picking me up. Goodbye." Asher seemed to say something behind me, but I couldn't listen anymore. As if being chased by a ghost, I desperately ran upstairs. When I reached upstairs, I desperately knocked on my head with my hand. What on earth was I doing? I couldn't fall asleep that night. I stared wide-eyed until dawn. I realized that I had overestimated my ability to bear things and Asher's influence on me. It turned out that I still couldn't bear to see Asher with someone else. While lost in these thoughts, I received a message from Dorian. Chloe accidentally fell while getting up to use the restroom at night. She's now in the operating room for emergency treatment. Come to the hospital if you have time. While waiting outside the operating room, my hands and feet were ice cold. The past memories came crashing back to me. My right hand involuntarily touched my lower abdomen, and my heart was beating rapidly. It was probably about 2 hours later that the doctor came out of the operating room. Both the mother and the daughter are safe. The stone in my heart finally dropped. After giving birth to the baby, Chloe lay on the hospital bed with a face as white as paper. When she saw me come in, Chloe grabbed my hand. When I felt today, I thought I couldn't keep the baby. At that time, I thought that if I really couldn't keep this child, it would be retribution. Don't talk nonsense. Chloe shook her head. Let me finish what I have to say. Violet. I regret it. Really. The thing I regret the most in my life is asking you to get close to Asher for my own happiness. Looking at the baby, I can't even imagine how much pain you were in at that time. Chloe's words made me think of that period in the past again. Chloe and I are half-sisters. My mother was an Annie in Chloe's family. Just like in all those vulgar stories. The master of the house, Shane, forcefully had a relationship with her under the pretense of being drunk during her work. And then accidentally she got pregnant with me. Shane gave my mother a sum of money and asked her to leave Chloe's family. But my mother was already pregnant at that time. So she had a plan in mind and gave birth to me. Probably to get more money from Shane. But unexpectedly, she passed away a few years later. And then I was taken back to Chloe's family. In my memory, my mother didn't treat me well. She thought I was the culprit of her miserable fate. As for Shane, not to mention, he just regarded me as a servant begging to stay in Chloe's family. Only Chloe was different. It was she who told me that I had done nothing wrong and that the one who should pay the price was Shane. Chloe's company was like a beam of light, illuminating my lonely childhood. She was so kind to me, but I could never find anything to repay her. Until Asher appeared. Asher was the marriage partner that Shane found for Chloe to save the company. Chloe already had a boyfriend at that time and naturally didn't want to follow her father's arrangement. So she entrusted me to get close to Asher and ask Asher to take the initiative to break off the engagement. Things went smoothly. Asher indeed fell in love with me and asked the Asher family to break off the engagement. The only unexpected thing was that I also fell in love with him for real. I didn't want to mention the past anymore. I touched Chloe's head. It's all in the past. It was already afternoon when I came out of the hospital. I felt dizzy and my head was pounding since I hadn't slept for a whole day. When I got home, I was too exhausted and fell asleep immediately. In a trance. I always felt that someone was talking to me. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't hear the voice clearly. I seemed to be dreaming again. I dreamed of my wedding with Asher. He stood on the stage in a straight suit, waiting for his bride. The music played. And the bride in a white wedding dress approached step by step. But that person wasn't me. Where was I? Where had I gone? I desperately called out to Asher. But I ran into Asher's father head-on. His face was stern. Our Asher family will never allow a woman with ulterior motives to marry into our family. My father, Shane, also sneered. People should know their place. You will always be just the daughter of a servant. All these voices were spinning rapidly in my ears. I helplessly covered my ears, trying to throw these noisy sounds away completely. Violet? Violet! The familiar voice pulled me out of the nightmare. I slowly opened my eyes. It was actually Asher. I couldn't tell the difference between reality and the dream. I could only follow my heart and pounce on him. Bursting into tears, Asher held me in his arms and gently patted my back, just like countless times in the past. Finally, having fulfilled my sigh. When my emotions were completely stable, I gradually realized a problem. Why are you here? I called you but couldn't get through. So I thought I'd drop by and take a look. I picked up my phone and indeed, it was turned off. Probably the battery is dead. I tried to get up, and Asher was a bit vigilant. Where are you going? I was a bit surprised by Asher's reaction. To the restroom. Asher coughed softly. Then you can go. At first, I was wondering why Asher reacted so strongly. Until I walked out of the room and saw the front door of my house lying on the ground in an extremely strange posture. It was empty outside. I was completely stunned and slowly looked at the person behind me. Did you take this door apart? Asher explained. You changed the password. And you didn't hear the doorbell when I rang it. So this was his reason for taking the door apart. Asher stopped looking at me. I'll call someone to install a new one right away. After saying that, he turned around and went back to the bedroom. He even seemed to be running away in a hurry. I scratched my head. Was this what he meant by dropping by to take a look? Well, what a convenient drop by. I had already realized that the boundary between Asher and me was becoming more and more blurred. This was very dangerous. And it was also unfair to another person. In order not to let myself fall into this situation again, I directly submitted a job transfer application to my unit, hoping to be seconded to a rural area in a neighboring city and work as a field reporter for a while. During this period, Asher also became extremely busy. Sometimes he would come to the apartment. Mostly at night. It was just limited to saying hello to me and then leaving. It seemed that he just came to take a look at me. But this also gave me enough time to prepare for moving my things. Unexpectedly, a few days before I left, when I was shopping with Chloe, I accidentally ran into Irene and another man. Irene was arm in arm with that man, and their intimate posture made it clear that they were a couple. My mind was a bit confused. Wasn't Irene Asher's fiancée? Why was she getting involved with another person now? Chloe frowned. Could it be that she's also forced to do this? Just like I was back then? I don't think so. Asher isn't a naive person anymore. How could anyone not like him? Chloe looked at me, opened her mouth, and finally couldn't help but say, not everyone has the same taste as you. In the following days, I was constantly torn between whether to tell Asher that his fiancée was suspected of having an affair. On the one hand, I felt that, with my current status, what I said might not be very credible. On the other hand, I was worried that Asher might be deceived again. After all, although Asher's intelligence had returned to normal now, he didn't have much experience in relationships. And it wasn't impossible for him to be deceived again. As a result, I was so torn that it was time for me to leave. I suddenly realized that I hadn't said goodbye to Asher yet. I had already emptied all my things from the apartment. And this time when I left, I actually wanted to put an end to our relationship. Even if it couldn't be the happy ending that everyone would like to see. On the day I left, I called Asher. He was still on a business trip negotiating a project in another place. I asked him, when will you be back? Asher chuckled softly. Violet actually cares about me. I'm truly honored. I wanted to tell you that I've moved out of the apartment. Asher fell silent. The high-speed railway station kept broadcasting the prompt for the train's arrival and ticket checking. Asher indeed heard it. Where are you? At the high-speed railway station. On a business trip? No. Asher fell silent again. After a long while, he chuckled. Violet. How dare you? I clenched my fist and slowly said, actually, I originally wanted to say goodbye to you in person. But I was afraid that if I faced you, I wouldn't be able to say what I wanted to say. Asher, I owe you an apology for all this time. I'm sorry for deliberately approaching you back then. I'm sorry for deceiving your feelings. I'm sorry for leaving without saying goodbye after you proposed to me. You once asked me if I had ever truly loved you even for a moment. I lied to you when I said no at that time. Asher, you're very good. Especially good. Your father was wrong about one thing. Whether you're smart or naive, you deserve to be treated preciously. I hope you'll be happy. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. At this moment, the sound of ticket checking for my train came from the station. I didn't know if Asher was still listening to me. I said to the other end, Asher. Goodbye. I hung up the phone. My phone was still vibrating crazily. All the calls were from Asher. I took out the original SIM card and threw it into the trash can. That past was about to become truly a thing of the past. After changing my job, my daily work was to follow the local villagers to work in the fields. And occasionally I would go out to sea with them. My life was quite leisurely. Except for very occasional moments when I would miss Asher. Chloe had a video call with me. The little baby could already lift its head by itself. The little one was trying so hard to lift its head. And it was so cute. It made my eyes a bit moist. If I had insisted on giving birth to the child back then, it should be quite big now. Chloe saw my expression, took the baby out of the camera frame, and said to me, "Asher seems to know about your pregnancy in the past." My heart skipped a beat. How could he know? Chloe shook her head. He came to see me a few days ago and played with the baby for a while. Before he left, he asked me if you cried when you had the surgery back then. What did you say? I said that if he really wanted to know, he should come and ask you himself. I clutched the hem of my clothes with my right hand, unable to imagine Asher's expression. Chloe seemed to want to say something more to me. But at this moment, someone outside called my name. Since I was feeling a bit confused, I used this as an excuse to hang up the phone. I never expected that the person who came was Nathan. The boy showed his row of white teeth when he saw me. Editor Yang told me that you're working here. Since I'm on vacation, I took the initiative to come and find you. I want to ask you to help me get familiar with the environment. Help you get familiar with the environment? Nathan nodded. I also want to apply to work here next year. To be with you. Is that okay? Goodness. Are young people these days so bold? This was a direct hit. I was wondering how to refuse in a way that wouldn't affect our future work due to the breakdown of our relationship, and could also effectively discourage the boy in front of me. Before I could open my mouth, my body was suddenly pulled into someone's arms. I was startled. When I looked up, I saw Asher. He glanced down at me and sneered. Violet. It seems you've been doing well during the time I wasn't around. Nathan obviously knew Asher too. He was completely stunned. You too. Asher raised his eyebrows. You kid. You're a journalist too. Right? Nathan nodded. And then he heard Asher say, "I'll give you an exclusive news." As soon as the words fell, Asher held my face and kissed me directly. I even heard Nathan gasp. Pay attention. My lips hurt slightly. Asher frowned in dissatisfaction because I was distracted. Asher didn't let me go until my legs went limp. I don't know when Nathan had already left. Why did you kiss me? What do you think? I didn't know. Logically speaking, if Asher knew now that I had an operation behind his back when I was pregnant back then, he should be very angry. He shouldn't be kissing me. I suddenly thought. Did your fiancé cheat on you, or was it discovered by you? I clearly felt Asher's temple twitch. Cheat? Damn it. It seemed he didn't know yet. I quickly covered my mouth. I said the wrong thing. Asher sneered. It's too late. Now you can give me a good explanation of how many things you've been hiding from me. Unexpectedly, after Asher listened and to me tell the story of how I saw Irene walking intimately with a man, he just said, "Oh. Why aren't you angry?" Why should I be angry? Asher seemed a bit puzzled. She was going out with her husband. What's there for me to be angry about? Husband? I widened my eyes. Isn't she your fiancée? Who told you that? Asher paused. So is this the reason why you left? Isn't this reason enough? You said it yourself. That you were taking your fiancée to dinner. As a result. Asher looked at me and asked back. Do you really not know who my fiancée is? From beginning to end. There's only one person I've ever proposed to. It's me. Asher proposed to me. At that time, he was still a little fool. But he seriously filled the house with balloons and also prepared a diamond ring. The only fly in the ointment was that the little fool was a bit too nervous that day and vomited halfway through his confession. But I still accepted the proposal. That was the happiest day of my life. Unfortunately, having fulfilled the happiness didn't last long. A few days later, Asher's father found me. Asher likes you very much. But I also know your purpose of getting close to Asher. I'm very sorry. But we may not be able to accept someone with ulterior motives to marry into the Asher family. Especially since you're still half a sister of Chloe's. At that time, I was exactly 8 weeks pregnant. Asher has a simple personality. I knew that telling him these things would only add to his pressure and make his originally happy world turn gloomy. Since that's the case, I might as well leave the decision to fate. I thought that if the child could be born safely and grow up, I would take this little fool away despite the obstruction of Asher's father. Unfortunately, heading softly, things didn't go as I wished. In the 9th week, when I was driving home with Asher, we had a car accident. The person who caused the accident was my father, Shane. He failed to kill me, but my child left me because of it. And Asher. He was taken into the operating room. I found Asher's father. I promise you that I'll leave Asher. But I have a condition. Please. Please don't let Shane appear in our world again. Later, Chloe's family went bankrupt. And I also kept my promise and left Asher. But I didn't know that because of that accident, Asher was unexpectedly lucky. The blood stasis caused by the impact made him regain his intelligence. Before I came, I didn't want to forgive you. Asher looked at me. But we've already wasted so much time. And I don't want to waste any more. I couldn't protect you before. But in the future, I'll do my best to make sure you don't suffer any grievances. Do you still want to be with me? I couldn't hold back my tears anymore. I should be the one asking you. Do I still have the right to be with you? Of course. Nathan still reported the news about me and Asher. After all, it's a performance opportunity that came directly to him. Why not take it? Asher even provided a photo. It was a group photo of me and him taken a few years ago. At that time, Asher was still silly. I showed a row of white teeth to the camera. And Asher turned his head to look at me, with love shining in the corners of his eyes. As a result, the topic Asher's fiancé became popular again. So Asher's fiancé is really that journalist. Sister-in-law. I'm sorry for accidentally hurting you before. I didn't dare to say a word. And the interview ended in a strange atmosphere. I put marriage on the public screen. The comments on the internet kept coming one after another. And I found them a bit funny. You can't have hired online trolls? You're not a celebrity. How can you have such a high level of discussion? And they're all positive comments. Is that not allowed? I'm not short of money. I opened my mouth, and in the end, I chose to give a thumbs up. Rich. It still has to be Asher who's rich. A year later, Asher and I finally got married. Chloe and her husband attended my wedding with their baby. I suddenly thought, did you deliberately tell Asher about my miscarriage back then? Chloe smiled. If you and Asher have feelings for each other, then be together earlier. Our lives are too short. We don't even have enough time to be with the people we love. So why waste it on those sensational misunderstandings? Moreover, Chloe lowered her voice. Asher is really rich. He invested in Dorian's startup project. So he's also half my boss. I couldn't help laughing. At the wedding, Asher took out the ring he used to propose to me. He knelt down on one knee. When I was still silly before, my mom was worried every day that I would give the wrong ring at the wedding. She said that when getting married, the ring should be given to the most beautiful girl. Today, I finally found that most beautiful girl. Violet, I want to be your little fool for the rest of my life. Will you marry me? I nodded vigorously. I'd be more than happy to. The end of the full text.